Welcome to Reliance Community Church. Our heart's desire is to help you connect with the living hope, Jesus Christ, by building a relationship with Him. The more we focus on discovering who God really is through Jesus Christ, the more we are changed. Knowing God intimately can transform your life into one of passion, joy, adventure, and peace. We hope this teaching can help you in your own personal journey. If there is anything we can do to assist you in that journey, pray for you, or encourage you, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll tell you how to do that at the end of this teaching. We are so glad you are here with us today.
This morning we're starting a new series entitled, You Are Made for More. You are made for more. Its purpose is really to help us reflect upon our individual journey. It's how we started, where we come from, where we've been, where we are, and ultimately where we're going. I like this quote, and if you can put it up, Brett, I'd appreciate it. It says, each one of us is given this amazing journey of life. It is up to us to be open to what's in store, some of which we can control, some of which we can't. We need to just believe and let go as our precious story unfolds. You see, each one of us was created to be a story, to experience life and all of its facets. It's not a story that can simply be read, it's one that is lived. We're not fictional characters. We are flesh and blood, and each chapter of our lives continues to be written with each experience we have and with each challenge that we face. How many like to read stories as a kid? You know, there were fairy tales and nursery rhymes when we started, right? Something to entertain us. Not always true, but interesting. And then as you got older, there were novels that you were required to read if you took certain classes in school. And then you would have to do reports on those novels, as you recall. Some of which you found interesting, and other things maybe not as interesting. My wife collects books. I'm not saying she reads the books, I'm saying she collects the books. Every place she goes, she looks for books. If she goes to a secondhand store, she looks for books. And our house is full of books. In fact, she asked me one day, she said, I need more shelves, more bookshelves. She says, I want a room that's just full of bookshelves and full of books. And I said, if you go down the street a ways and turn left, and there's something called the public library. I said, it's full of books, and it has all the shelves that you need in order to store those books. Because, you know, it's nice to have the books. And again, you know, going through seminary, you know, I have a full volume library of books that I was required to read in order to qualify to ultimately become credentialed as a pastor. Okay? Books that, again, I read, I had to. But again, some people collect books just for the sake of having books because it looks good on a shelf, right? They've never cracked the page. They've never even finished it. And for a lot of people, they don't finish books. How many know that? How many have been guilty of that? You start a book, it's interesting when you start, there's a novelty, but then all of a sudden you lose interest and you never quite finish the book. Now, I know many people will run to the end of the book. How many have done that? You know, you say, well, I didn't quite read the whole thing, but I did see how it ends, right? I've been able to read the last few pages. So I'm sure what was in the middle wasn't important. It's how it starts and how it ends. And that's how most people view life. How it starts and how it ends. Not what happens in between. But that's the story of our life. It's not always just how we're born or how we die. It's what we've done from between the start and the finish. They say that a story has 5 basic important elements. These 5 components are character, the setting, the plot, the conflict, and the resolution. If you're going to write a story, it has to include these 5 elements. It starts with the character. You know who that is? That's you and me. We are the character of our story. The story God has chosen to write about our life. We're the central character. We're the hero. We're who people are looking to when they read our story. Jeremiah, in the 1st chapter and the 5th verse in the Amplified Version, says it this way. God speaking, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew and approved of you as my chosen instrument. And before you were born, I separated you and set you apart, consecrating you, in other words, dedicating you for a divine purpose. And I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Wow. Now that's what I call an auspicious beginning, isn't it? That's what was announced before you were ever born. That was your introduction. That's how God introduced you. And in the book world, this is what's called a page turner. You know what a page turner is? That's when you read something and says, man, I got to see what's going to happen next, right? If it's starting out this way, man, what's it going to ultimately end up becoming? Now, you don't want your life to be a bad movie. How many have been to a bad movie? How many have been to a movie where you walked in, you said, man, this is going to be so good because it was built up? How many know they build up movies when they're promoting them? And sometimes the best scenes in the movie are in the trailer, right? The best part of the movie is what you see on the screen before the movie ever starts, and then it doesn't get any better than that. But God has started out by promoting your life, describing it as was shared in Jeremiah. A page turner. Can't wait to see what's going to happen next. The Scripture describes the beginning of our journey, that clearly you were not made to live an ordinary life. Right? With that kind of introduction, how can your life be ordinary? It can't be. God determined that you should live an extraordinary life. God's Word clearly says that we were born with 3 things: favor, purpose, and position. Favor, purpose, and position. How many have known what it's like to be an expectant parent? Anybody? Anybody know what it's like to expect children, right? How many know they have something these days called the reveal? You know what that is? Okay, the reveal. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Basically what happens is you get the ultrasound done and they don't tell you the results. They send it to the florist, right? Or the party store. And the party store's job is to then package the balloons and other decorative things so that you invite people over so you all find out together whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, right? And you pop open the box and the balloon flies out and if it's pink, you know it's a girl. If it's blue, you know it's going to be a boy. I attended one of these not long ago. Where's Brittany? Is Brittany in here? She's not. Joel's daughter. We got invited to go over to Joel's when Brittany was expecting for the reveal. And what was curious about it, they said, okay, we're going to take a poll. We've got, the board was up, and okay, how many of you think it's going to be a boy? And everybody, how many? Okay, yeah. How many a girl? Okay. And so they open up the box, and boom, it's a girl. I chose a boy. It's a girl. I says, oh man, I thought I had it, right? I thought I knew. Well, actually I knew better than I thought, because a few months later, when they got a little closer to the date, they figured out it wasn't a girl after all, it was a boy. Somebody got it wrong, right? The prediction was not right. That whatever system or source they used, and these days we're highly scientific, right? Highly technical. How can you make a mistake like that, right? That's why they call it practicing medicine. It's not perfected yet, okay? All right? Now that ultrasound supposedly can predict the sex of the baby, right? That's what it's made for. It can predict the sex of the baby. But it can't predict that child's future. It can tell you whether it's going to be a boy or girl, but it can't tell you what that child's going to be like. How many couldn't have imagined your child looked like your child looked when it was born? Right? Nobody can predict I don't care how good the picture is on the screen, it doesn't really tell you what that child's going to look like, or who that child's going to look like, or who that child's going to take after, does it? How many have been surprised that your child is more like the mom or the dad or some other relative? I see kids that I don't even think they belong to those parents. I think they belong to somebody else. They don't look like them. They don't act like them. It's amazing. You did all the work and somebody else gets the credit for your kid. There's got to be, something's wrong, right? But an ultrasound cannot predict the future. It doesn't. God knows what the future holds, right? God knows exactly what's going to happen. I mean, how often have you... Look, if I could predict the future, I'd be a rich man today, right? Pick the right stocks, right? Make the right choices. Everything will work out exactly the way it's supposed to. But we realize that we don't know the future. But we know who holds the future in His hands. And He's chosen you and me. And we have been made to be exactly who and what we are, regardless of what we look like, right? I mean, seriously. Not one of you looks exactly the same. You look alike, but not the same. How many know that the longer you're married, people say you look more alike, right? Maybe because they see you together all the time, all of a sudden you kind of merge into one person. I don't think that's ever going to happen with Sherry and me. There is no way they're going to look at the two of us and say, boy, you guys look so much alike. That's not going to happen, right? That's not possible. Although they do say that dogs, I guess, are like their owners, right? How many know that? People will say that dog looks just like their owner. Isn't that awful? Compared to a dog. Unbelievable. Depends on the owner. Right, exactly, Scott. Okay? So God has established the character, right? The main focus of the story. God has decided that you are the main focus of the story. But it can't end with you, right? It's not just you by yourself. You don't live life alone, do you? And you don't live in isolation. That's not possible. So to this character, God must now add the setting, right? The setting. What is that? This is how it's defined in Webster's dictionary. The place or type of surroundings where something is positioned or where an event takes place. In layman's terms, it's where things happen. How many ever saw that movie, A League of Their Own? All-girls baseball team during the war when the men were fighting. Okay? Love that movie. I have one particular character in that movie that I love more than anything. If you've watched the movie, you know who I'm talking about. Somebody called Marla Hooch. Hooch. Okay? Not the most attractive physically person in the movie, but definitely the one that I thought had the most character. She's a great baseball player, but she doesn't quite fit the requirement physically of what they're looking for. And so they go ahead and draft her, and she's getting ready to leave, right, to join the baseball team, but she's reluctant to do that because she doesn't want to leave her father alone. So they're sitting at the train station. I don't know if you can bring it up for me. They're sitting at the train station, and her father, can I have it? Thank you. Her father says, you have to understand that nothing is ever going to happen here. You got to go where things happen. That's what God is saying to us. We find ourselves in places where nothing is ever going to happen. You have to go where things happen. That's the setting. God is asking you to go. You need to go. You can't stay where you're at. You got to go. You got to move. It says in Matthew chapter 5 verse 14 in the Message. Here's another way to put it as it describes it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. You're not meant to be God's best kept secret. You know that, right? Somebody was telling me this morning, I think Kenny was sharing, how he was advertising the church, because this church is not meant to be the best kept secret in town. People need to know that we exist. People need to know that God lives here. You individually are not meant to be the best kept secret. You need to be out there. You need to be public. Your life needs to be lived out among people, not to be lived individually or in isolation. Why would God endow you with favor, with purpose and position, and then not place you someplace where these aspects of your life have the most impact? Why would he give you these gifts and say, don't use them, though? How many of you ever given your kids something and said, oh, by the way, don't play with it. Don't use it. You just hold it. Just keep it, Just store it away. But don't use it. You wouldn't do that, would you? If somebody didn't use a gift that you gave them, wouldn't you be insulted? If I give somebody a wedding gift and I go over their house and I don't see it, I'm of a mind that maybe they re-gifted it. You know that term? They didn't use it. They gave it to somebody else. They didn't appreciate it, but they thought somebody else could. Okay? If I give you something, I'm going to go over your house and look for it. If I give you something to wear, man, I'm going to be watching to make sure you're wearing it. That's how it works. And this is the way God sees us. How many know that life is seasonal? Life is seasonal. You're not meant to stay in the same place for any length of time. I remember growing up, my dad worked for the same company his whole life. Retired from that company, right? Because in the town I grew up in, people worked for a certain place for years, they retired, and that was it. But rarely is that the case anymore. Rarely is anybody able to stay with one company because what happens? The company gets sold, right? All of a sudden they lose that, what they thought was job security. Job security is no longer what you can expect. Our lives are not meant to stay in the same place forever, but yet we think they are. So we don't want to move. Alicia and Kurt have recently been in the process of moving, right? After how many years in the same house? 34 years in the same house. And they moved in 4 days, right? Packed everything in 4 days. 34 years of accumulation in 4 days. Now that's impressive, right? Because I'm sure you had a couple things, right? Yeah, I had a few things. What did you say? You had 4 pods and a storage, and then 5 pods, 2 storage, and Alicia Suburban. And the reason I know that is because I met up with Alicia this week, and I thought she was living in her car. And she says, no. She says, I didn't want to take it out and put it in storage because I was just going to have to bring it back out and put it in the house when we finally move in a week or so. Right? This is what happens. We start to accumulate things and think that they're meant to be, only had in that position, in that place, in that time. And that's not how God does it. That's not how He works. But we've got to be willing to move. We've got to be willing to understand that a setting is going to change. It's not going to stay the same. My son and future daughter-in-law are in a show right now out at the Lyceum Theater at Vanguard University. It's a show about the history of rock and roll. And I was talking to a couple, I went to see it yesterday, and I was talking to an older couple, and what they were impressed with is the same characters play throughout the show, but their changes have to be like this. Their costume changes are like this. These guys are backstage, and they're like in a phone booth, man. You walk in, and immediately you walk out, and you look different. You know how hard that is to change that quickly? Ladies, how hard is it to change that quickly? And one night I went to see the show, and my son Josiah had a wardrobe malfunction. Total breakdown, right? One scene he comes out in a tuxedo. Now, I don't know, he didn't have a lot of time to change, and so when he walked out, I noticed that the cummerbund was being dragged behind him. The tie was tweaked this way. The collar wasn't buttoned, right? His shirt cuffs weren't buttoned. His belt was over to the side this way. It was, I couldn't believe one person could have that many wardrobe malfunctions in one change. But sometimes life changes that quick, doesn't it? Sometimes your circumstances change that quickly. You have to be a quick change artist in order to keep up with life. And that's not easy to do. But sometimes that's what God requires of us. And now that we have a character and now that we have a setting, we need a plot. The plot is the storyline, the scenario. In other words, the plot is the plan. This is what God establishes. In Jeremiah 29:11, He says it this way, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." How many have heard that before? How many have stood on that before? You got to hold on to that. Why is it so easy to doubt that God who created us, the God who positioned us, who has given us purpose, and whose favor rests on our lives, would not have plotted out a course marked with blessing and hope? Why would He give you such an auspicious beginning and then drop the ball somewhere along your life? And people think this, though. They think, God, what happened? I mean, man, you tooted the horn when I was coming, right? I mean, great announcement. He's here, she's here. And then all of a sudden, He's just going to forget about you? It doesn't work that way. His greatest desire is to see His purpose in our lives fulfilled, to see us expand our level of faith and expectation, to be instruments of blessings to others. Like the name of the series says, He has made us for more. How many know that our plans are always subject to change? How many know that the plan you make at the beginning of the day doesn't necessarily get carried out through the day? Anybody do that? You make a list of everything you got to get done today, and what happens at the end of the day when you look back over that list? Oftentimes it's still the list, right? No check marks, you didn't get to it. And that's the way life is, right? That's the way life is. But God's plan doesn't change just because ours does, right? His plan for your life never changes. He knows exactly what He wants for you. He knows when it needs to happen, where it needs to happen, with who it needs to happen, and that does not change. Who changes? We do, right? I help build dialysis clinics. I have to look at plans. I have to help design these plans and say, this is the way this clinic needs to be designed if it's going to operate the way it's supposed to when it's done. And it's got to get signed off by a building inspector. It's got to get signed off by the health department. It's got, and all these things have to happen. And so, over the years, you kind of learn a few things, right? So one day I'm in there looking at the plumbing, which I know how it has to be designed and exactly how it is on the plan. And I look up at the ceiling, and it doesn't look like that. I'm going, well, this is odd, And I talked to the plumber, and I said, hey, that doesn't match the plan. What happened? He goes, oh, I always do it this way. What do you mean? Oh, I always just do it this way. I said, oh, you don't follow the plan. No, I know what I'm doing. How many have ever used that excuse? I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. It's covered. Isn't that our life? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Until you realize you don't know what you're doing. There has to be a plan, right? There's got to be a plan. You got to execute the plan. Otherwise, you're never going to get it finished. You wonder why you get turned around. You wonder why you're always distracted. You wonder why you're lost. You wonder why it never comes out the way you think it's going to. How many bake and cook? How many know how to bake? Anybody know how to bake? Right? How many know how to bake? Now, do you need a recipe, a menu? Or have you been doing this so long, you know how to do it, right? No? No? How many know that the DoubleTree has great cookies? And you know what? The DoubleTree Hotel has great cookies. If you stay there, you get cookies. They're great cookies. Well, we tried to make those cookies at home. They didn't come out like DoubleTree, let me tell you. We obviously didn't follow the plan, right? We didn't follow the plan. And the result then wasn't what it should have been. If your life is going to become what it's supposed to, you got to follow the plan. Not your plan, His plan. Not what you decide, what He's already decided long before you were born. That's what matters. And just when we find ourselves beginning to believe God's promises, that fourth element comes along in the story, which is what? The conflict, right? Now we're going, we're moving, we're rolling, right? Everything's coming along, and all of a sudden, boom, the conflict. The element that attempts to come against the purpose and plan of God, which has been established in our lives. Deuteronomy 28:7. The Lord will cause the enemies who rise up against you. And again, He's saying they're coming, okay? They're coming. You don't have to wonder if they're coming. It's coming. There's going to be conflict in your life. It's never going to go perfectly. There's always going to be somebody that disagrees, doesn't want to go along with the program that you've established. There's going to be conflict. The Lord will cause the enemies who rise up against you to be defeated before you. They will come out against you one way, but flee before you 7 different ways. They may have come against you united, all in single file, right? But scattered. That's what He's saying. You see, you have to understand that this is the way God works. Interesting. Whenever we begin to live out God's promises, there will always be someone who or something that will bring conflict to challenge the validity of them and our commitment to them. The minute you take a stand, somebody's going to come up against that stand you're taking. Okay? You know what my favorite show is, even though they took it off the air? What do you think it is? The Last Man Standing. They took it off for political reasons. How many know that, right? They didn't like, the culture of the show, and so they took it off. I love that show. Why? Because it's me, right? That character is me. I can identify with that character. I'm now at an age where I've established my life, what I think, what I believe, how I function, and again, I can relate to the individual who's shown in that show. Each one of us has to be able to take a stand and hold it. It is the circumstances that we face that cause us to question whether God has spoken, what He has spoken is what we believe, regardless of the chaos that surrounds us. How are you going to know, right? How are you going to know if you're not facing conflict? That defines us. Conflict defines us. It makes us realize who and what we are. That's what it does, and it needs to. Because if you never had opposition, how would you know how to be competitive, right? Any athletes in the room? You got to play against somebody, right? You got to compete against somebody. I found out this morning that Chris likes tennis. Not really. He didn't even know tennis existed until Donna showed it to him, right? He was talking to the worship team this morning as they were warming up about these people that make those noises when they play tennis. You know what I'm talking about. Ooh! But what does this person do? Ooh! They make some weird sound every time. And they're making that sound every time they hit the ball. Right? The whole time, all you can think about is this person making that strange noise when they hit the tennis ball. But you got to have opposition. You can't play tennis if there's no one on the other side of the net, can you? Right? It doesn't work real. That's what you call handball, racquetball, right? Up against the wall, just you and the wall, and that's it. You got to have competition, and God knows that. He knows how to develop your character because He allows conflict to come into your life. Conflict is inevitable. There will always be someone or something that challenges our beliefs, our purpose, and our methods, right? You take a stand, somebody's going to stand against that stand, aren't they? You want to watch cable news? Every one of those shows, back and forth, back and forth. They don't like the president. They don't like his decisions. They don't like this certain congressperson. They don't like their decision. Everything in life is questioned. Everything is constantly being questioned. If you don't know what you believe, if you have not taken a firm stand, then you're going to be confused. I guarantee you. You watch enough shows, you'll be totally turned around. You won't know what to think unless you're firm in your beliefs, unless you've established a standard. And this is what God is talking about. He says, I've established you so you don't move, that you don't move from that position. That position is where you need to be, no matter what comes against you. And the last element of the story is the resolution. It is God's answer to everything that we go through, everything we will ever face. It is the final word. What does that mean? Nothing else needs to be said. Now, in my life, in my relationship, I think I have the final word, right? I give my final word. But guess what? My final word is not the final word. It's only my final word. Apparently, there's somebody I live with that has an additional word after my word has been given. Isn't that amazing how that works, I think this is it. Done. Nope, not done. There's still more to say. It shouldn't be that way, right? Somebody's got to have the final word. Somebody has got to have the final word. In what is called resolution writing, there is a phrase that is always used, and it reads this way: therefore, let it be resolved. That's the language. If you look at any contract, any legal document, that's what it says. Therefore, let it be resolved. What does that mean? To put it another way, this is the final word. It's not going to be amended later, right? We're not going to change our mind and change the language later. This is it. The way it's written, that's how it's going to stay. That's why you can trust the Bible. Years ago, people tried to change the Bible. Remember that? Back in the 80s? All these scholars got together, and I love what one of the ministers said. He goes, these scholars got together, and they're going to tell God what He said. No, he didn't say that. This is what he said. No, this is what he meant. That's what we do in life, isn't it? We try to decipher, we try to, to interpret for ourselves what we think it means. Oh, you think that's what it means. It really doesn't mean that, right? Why do you think people are so messed up? Because they can't decide what it means, what it is, right? That one article. And oftentimes that's what I say. Oh, you think that's what you heard? That's not really what you heard. Oh, you think that's what happened? That's really not what happened. And how many times I've had people approach me that way? I'm going, what are you talking about? You were sitting right next to me. We're in the room. We heard it together. How can it not have happened? How can that not be what was meant? We serve a God who holds the final word, and it is His word, right? His word, not mine, not yours, His. That's the final word. 2 Timothy 3:16, last verse. It says, the whole Bible, and get this, the whole Bible was given to us by inspiration from God and is useful to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. It straightens us out and helps us to do what is right. The whole Bible. I love when people try to parse it out, right? Oh, I'll take this but not this. They think they're at a buffet, right? People think the Bible's a buffet. Okay, I'll go to the fish section, but I'm not going to the meat section or the vegetable section. I only like this. I like the dessert section. Everybody likes the dessert section, right? How many of you go to places and only eat dessert? Anybody do that? Usually you're so full from what you eat, you don't have to dessert, right? You don't have room for dessert. But people think that they take the Bible and they say, I just want the dessert. I don't want the meat. I want the dessert. I don't want to take the instruction. I just want to take the blessings. Right? I only want to do what I want to do. I want to take what it says and use it the way I want to use it, not the way it was intended to be used. Everything else in life, everything else around us may be subject to change, but we serve an unchanging God. How many have been around enough to see technology change year after year, right? The thing I love about the show that Josiah and Christine are in is that it's the history of rock and roll, and it talks about the change in music and the change in technology from the 50s to the year 2000. And it's a fascinating show. Not just the music is ridiculously good. I mean, the kids are phenomenal. All the kids in the show are phenomenal. But it's a history of the world from the 50s to the 2000s reflected in music and the technology. They talk about the transistor radio and said, man, what do they think of next? My gosh, this is the most incredible thing ever designed, is this little 9-volt transistor radio. And I've had a transistor radio. Remember what those were like? Man, if you got FM, you were living, right? Things have changed, right? Dramatically changed. Every aspect of life, technology continues to change. And some of it's good. Some of it's necessary. But the problem is that if we change the way technology does, we will not be the same person that anybody used to know, right? I think we've talked about this before, and the reason you know it's me is because I look the same in every picture from the beginning of time to now. What do I mean by that? My wardrobe has never changed, right? Those clothes still fit, right? No, my daughter tells me that. Dad, you look at your pictures, it's always tan shorts with a blue shirt and a ball cap and tennis shoes. She goes, and every picture, that's you. You look at Mom and you don't know who that was, you know. Don't recognize her. But me, easily spotted out, can't hide. Certain things in life were meant to change, others were never meant to change. God is unchanging. He's got to be one that you rely on is not going to change. You'd like to believe that your friends will never change. You'd like to believe your family will never change. You'd like to believe that you've got guarantees in life that people are going to honor, right? No matter how many years go by, they're going to honor the commitment they made. But it doesn't happen. All too often, people fail at their commitments. They don't honor them. God is the only one that never changes. His word never changes. What He promises, He delivers. You can count on it. You live by it. He writes the story. He writes your story if you allow Him to do it. But some of us want to be, what do you call those, ghostwriters, right? How many know what a ghostwriter is? Their name's not on the cover, right? They don't get the credit, but they're the ones that are actually writing the story. God doesn't need any ghostwriters. He writes pretty well by Himself. Okay? He doesn't need an architect. God is a pretty good architect Himself, right? Good designer, good engineer. He doesn't need any help. What He does need is for us to live according to what He has purposed and designed for our life, and to live, again, with those things that He has given to us, He has instilled in us, and allows us then to utilize those to accomplish the purpose He has determined for us. How many who have older kids, your kids didn't go the direction you thought they were going to? Right? You said, wouldn't it be great if my kid would do this, that, and the other, right? Wouldn't that be great? You said, yeah, I can see it. I'll be there the day that they're on the podium, right? And they're being honored for doing what I thought they should do, right? If it were up to my mother, I'd be a priest, not a minister. That's a little different lifestyle, if you know what I mean, okay? I mean, I didn't quite get there. I mean, I partly got there, but I didn't quite get there completely. Because that was her dream for one of her children. We had cops and a priest. That's what she thought. Instead, she got cops and a minister. Almost. Pretty close. But God already knows. He knew from the beginning what He wanted your future to look like. Whether or not your future is your present and your future ultimately becomes that is whether or not you're willing to be obedient to His word, to what He has determined for you. Okay? Your life was meant for more. Absolutely. Your life was meant to have more. And I don't mean more stuff. I don't mean junk. I don't mean stuff that distracts you. I'm talking about you were meant to have a more fulfilled life. A life that has purpose. A life that encourages other people, that makes a difference and impacts lives. That's what your life was meant to be. If it's not doing that, somewhere you took a wrong turn. If your life's only about you, you've missed it. Okay? You stop looking at the plan. You stop reading the book. I want to equal the announcement that was made when God decided that I needed to exist on this earth. I want to fulfill that. That's my responsibility, to fulfill what He has announced. And yours. Now, you may have taken some wrong turns along the way, but it's not too late to get back on the straight path. Right? How many have ever gotten lost turning off the wrong exit? Right? How the heck did I get here? I don't even know where the heck I am. That's what I tell people when they show me something unique. I go, you know what? I couldn't get lost and find this place. I would never have just taken a wrong turn, and here I am, right here. That doesn't happen to me, right? The places I get lost in, I can't come back from, seemingly. There's no on-ramp. I take the exit, but there's no on-ramp for some reason. I don't know what it is. But it's not too late to get back on, the right road. I don't care what's happened. I don't care what wrong decisions you've made. It's not too late. God hasn't given up on you just because you haven't gone according to plan and form. Today is an opportunity to make the decision to get back on board, right? Get back on the bus, right? It's still going the same direction. You just got off at the wrong terminal. It's time to get back on board. I hope this has hit something in your life this morning. Hopefully it's reminded you maybe of a promise that was made, somebody that spoke over your life. Somebody's been praying for you guys, that you're ultimately going to become what you're destined to become. Everybody has an opinion. I have one. I love my children, but I can't live their lives for them, right? I did everything to support them growing up, to try to encourage them to do what they loved and what they had abilities to do, but what they do with it now is up to them. I can't control that anymore. And God is the same way with His children, us. He says, I've given you all the tools. Give you the plans, give you the tools, I give you the opportunities. He says, I've been there for you when it hadn't gone so well, when, it didn't work out because maybe you made a few mistakes along the way. He says, but I haven't left you. I'm still there. And He's still here today and right now.
Thanks for listening to the teaching of Reliance Community Church of Upland, California. To discover more about us or to contact us, visit our website at www.reliance-cc.org, or you may also email us at info@reliance-cc.org, or call us at 909-294-6324. You may also write us at P.O. Box 966, Upland, California, 91785. We believe you are blessed, and we hope we've helped you deepen your relationship with the living hope, Jesus Christ.